Well, hello and welcome to the St Julian's Primary School National Test support videos. This video is for the Year 5 2015 Procedural Maths Test. So here we go. Okay, so question number 1. Sports some children play, and they've given you a table full of some information about the different sports that some children play. The question is, who plays both rugby and karate? So we're looking for rugby and karate. I'm just going to put a small mark next to rugby and karate to show the two areas of the table that I'm looking at. So let's look at Jo first. Well, she plays rugby but not karate. Then we've got Tom. He doesn't play rugby, so we can't use him. Kerry, she does play rugby but she doesn't play karate. Ben, he does swimming. Liz, she does play rugby and does karate, so we're going to just circle Liz for a second, and let's just check the end one. Will, he doesn't do rugby, so it can't be him, so it's got to be Liz, who plays both rugby and karate, so we write her name in the box. The next question, how many children play 4 sports? So in other words, all we have to do for this one is count up the number of sports that each child plays. I'll write them underneath. You may like to do this when you do your tests, but you don't have to. So first of all, we've got Jo, who does 2 sports, so I'll write them in. Then we've got Tom, who does 1, 2, 3, 4 sports. Then we've got Kerry, who does 1, 2, 3 sports. Then we've got Ben, who does 1 sport. Then we've got Liz, who does 1, 2 sports. Then we've got Will, who does 1, 2, 3, 4 sports. So you can see there are 2 children who do 4 sports. Question number 2, write the number that is halfway between 20 and 80. Well, there are a couple of different ways to do this, but the way I'm going to show you is to draw myself a small number line beginning at 20 and counting up in tens all the way to 80. So we've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. And if I just highlight the 2 numbers we started and ended with, you can see very clearly that the number that falls halfway between 20 and 80 is the number 50. Question number 3, 890 add 110. Again, there are a couple of ways to do this. You can do it as a column addition sum if you prefer, so you can write out 890 add 110 and solve it like that. If you're most comfortable doing that, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you line up the units together, the tens together, and your hundreds together. The other way to do it is to look at both of these numbers. So I've got 890 and 110. Well, if you notice both of these numbers, 890 and 110, if I were to take this 10 and move it over here, that would give me 900 over there, and it would leave me with 100 over here. And all I would need to do then is 900 add 100 is 1000. Okay, next question, round 7,362 to the nearest 1,000. So the first thing I would do is show the thousands either side of this number. So 7,000 and 8,000. You can see how these are the 2 thousands either side of 7,362. Now, to work out whether we round up to 8,000 or down to 7,000, we look at the number to the right of what we're being asked to round to. So we're rounding to the nearest thousand. So we look at the thousands column and we look one place to the right, which is a 3. 3 is less than 5, so we round down to 7,000. So our answer is 7,000. The next question, round 7,362 to the nearest hundred. So this time we're rounding the same number, but to the hundred. So we've got to find the hundreds that lie either side of 7,362. So the first hundred is 7,300. And the next hundred on from that would be 7,400. So to decide whether we round up or down, again, we look at one place to the right of the number that we're being asked to find. So we're looking at the hundreds, so I find the hundreds, and I look one place to the right, which is the tens column, and we've got a 6. A 6 is higher than 5, so it rounds up this time. So we're rounding to 7,400. Okay, question number 5. What temperature is the arrow pointing to? So you can see we've got this arrow here on a thermometer scale. And you can see we've got two numbers. We've got 0 degrees here and we've got minus 10 degrees here. Now we need to first of all work out what the scale is counting in because there are no numbers along the scale here. So we need to work out what each of these gaps is. So there are 10 gaps. And there is minus 10. So we know that each one of these gaps is 1 degree. So I'm going to count down, and you can do this on your test as well if you like. I'm going to count out from 0, and I've got minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6, minus 7, minus 8. So the answer must be minus 8 degrees C. The other thing I could have done is count back from minus 10. So I could have said minus 10, minus 9, minus 8. And you can see we've arrived at the same answer. Okay, next question. Work out the area of the rectangle. Now, they've drawn this rectangle above for you, and they want you to work out the area. Remember that area is the amount of space inside the rectangle, so that's what you're trying to calculate. You could either do that by counting the squares inside the rectangle, because they very kindly left them in for you, so you could count the squares. That may take you quite a while though, and remember sometimes in a test you have a time limit, so you may run out of time. The other thing you could do is use the area formula, which is area equals length times width. So the length is 12 centimetres and the width is 6 centimetres. So all I need to do is 12 times 6. Well, we know that 10 times 6 equals 60, so I could just count on from there. 11 times 6 must be 66, and 12 sixes are 72 centimetres squared. The next part of that question, the rectangle is cut in half to make 2 squares. Work out the perimeter of one of these squares. So the first thing they've said is the rectangle has been cut in half to make 2 squares. So if you imagine now you've got 2 squares. There's one and there's the other one. So I've got 2 squares, both exactly the same. And it says work out the perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around the outside of one of these squares, and it doesn't matter which square you work out around the outside of because they are both exactly the same. So to work out the distance around the outside, you can see we've got this length here which is 6 centimetres, and this length here which is also 6 centimetres, and this length here which is also 6 centimetres, and this length here which is also 6 centimetres. So there are a couple of ways I could find the perimeter. I could either do 4 lots of 6, 4 times 6, or I could do 6 add 6 add 6 add 6. Either way you find your answer, you should come up with the answer of 24 centimetres. Okay, number 7, write 1/5 as a decimal. Well, when you divide 1 into 5 equal parts, you get 0.2. That's what it is as a decimal. The next part of the question, write 0.7 as a fraction. Well, you can see if I just write 0.7 below here as a decimal, 0.7, and look at the place value. So this is the units, and then this is a tenth. So I've got 7 tenths. 7 tenths, or 7 over 10. Okay, the next question, 274 add 241, and like I said before, don't be too afraid to write your workings out next to the sum or somewhere where there's space on the test paper. That's absolutely fine, and I'm just going to arrange this into a column addition sum. So I'm going to write 274 add 241. And notice how I've kept my units on top of my units, my tens on top of my tens, and my hundreds on top of my hundreds. So I'm going to start off with the units then. 4 units add 1 unit. That's easy, it's 5 units. I move to my tens column. I've got 7 add 4. So 7 tens add 4 tens actually equals 11 tens. So I'm going to carry the 1 into the hundreds column. Now I've got 2 hundreds, add another 2 hundreds, which is 400, add another 100, which is 500. So the answer to that first part of the question is 515. As I move on to the second part of the question, you'll notice it's 431. This time, take away 269. Careful that you don't get caught out. They did a plus or an adding sum for the first sum, and the second sum they've given you is a take away sum. Careful not to be caught out. Always look at what the symbol is that they want you to do. And again, I'm going to just write this out as a column subtraction sum underneath. So I'm going to show 431 minus or take away 269. And I'm going to just give myself some answer lines down there. Again, I'm going to start with the units. 1 take away 9 you cannot do. So we need to nip over next door and we need to take one of these tens. So I'm going to take one of those tens and I'm going to leave 2 tens there and take that one over. 11 take away 9 is 2. So I can put that there. 2 take away 6, or 2 tens take away 6 tens, we cannot do. There aren't enough in the top, so I need to go next door and take one of those hundreds, and I'm going to leave 3 hundreds there and carry that one over next door. Now I've got 12 tens take away 6 tens, and that leaves me with 6 tens there. Finally onto the hundreds. 3 hundreds take away 2 hundreds is 100. So your answer is 162. Question number 9. Find the difference between 9.1 and 6.7. To find the difference, all we do is take away the smallest number from the biggest number. So I'm going to do that as a column subtraction sum, and I'm just going to write out the biggest number, which was 9.1, take away 6.7. And I'm going to start with my tenths column. So I've got 1/10 take away 7/10. I can't do it, so I need to nip next door to the units to take one from there. So I'm going to leave 8 units and take 1 unit over to my tenths column. I've got 11 take away 7. 11 take away 7 is 4. Then I need to make sure my decimal point is in the same part underneath the other two. And I'm going to move across to my units. So I've got 8 units take away 6 units, which leaves me with 2. Therefore, my answer is 2.4. Question number 10. These calculations have the same answer. So we've got 16 divided by 4 and we've got 8 divided by 2. So what they're saying is that 16 divided by 4 will give you the same answer as 8 divided by 2. Well, let's just check, because they haven't given us the answers. We know that 4 goes into 16 4 times, and we know that 2 goes into 8 4 times as well. So they do have the same answer. Let's read this part below. Write numbers so that the calculations below have the same answer. So these two calculations need to have the same answer as each other, not as those two above, as each other. So to do that, let's look at what they've done to the calculations above. They've gone from 16 to 8. Well, to get from 16 to 8, you halve it. So 16 halved is 8. Let's look at what they've done to the other two numbers. To get from 4 to 2, they have also halved it. So we can do the same to our numbers at the bottom. We can find out what half of 36 is. Well, that's 18. And we can also find out what half of 6 is. Well, that's 3. So let's just check. They asked us to make sure the numbers in the calculations below have the same answer. Well, we know that 6 goes into 36 6 times, and we know that 3 goes into 18 6 times. So we've done what they've asked us to do. The next question, 4 multiplied by 187. There are lots of different ways to do this one. If you can do it in your head, that's absolutely fine. If you prefer to write it out as a written calculation, then you can use any of the spare space around your test sheet to show your workings out. That's absolutely fine. I'm just going to use the partitioning method, but you can use whichever method you've been learning in lesson or which you feel most comfortable with. So I'm going to do 4 multiplied by 100. Then 4 multiplied by 80, and then 4 multiplied by 7. And you can see all I've done is just partition 100, 80, and 7. Okay, so to work it out, I'm just going to put some equal signs in. So 4 multiplied by 100 is 400. Then we come on to 4 multiplied by 80. Now that's quite difficult to do, but I can do 4 multiplied by 8 and then times the answer by 10. So 4 multiplied by 8 is 32. Multiply the answer by 10 is 320. And the last part I've got to do is 4 multiplied by 7. 4 sevens are 28. So I'm going to make sure I line them up in the correct place value as well. So I've got my units on top of each other, my tens on top of each other, and my hundreds on top of each other. All I need to do is now add up my answers. So I've got 8 in the units, I've got 4 in the tens, and I've got 7 in the hundreds. So my answer is 748. That's only the first part of the question. It says write a calculation to check your answer. So if you were going to check your answer, we use the inverse operation. That means we run the sum backwards. So all we need to do is take the answer and start with it. So we can put the answer in this box, which is 748. Then we use our 187, and then we have what we started with before, which should now be our answer, which should equal 4. So if we were to check our answer and type into a calculator or work out the sum 748 divided by 187, the answer would be 4. Question number 13. And we've got a graph, and it says the time it takes for a liquid to cool down. So in other words, this graph shows us if a liquid was boiled really hot and it's left to cool down, and this is the time, and you can see as the time goes on the temperature starts to drop. So our first question then is, what is the temperature after 15 minutes? Well, to find 15 minutes we go along the time axis, but we can't see the number 15, but we do know that 15 falls exactly between 10 and 20. So we can follow that up and read 15 minutes off, and at 15 minutes our graph shows us that it was at exactly between 40 and 50, which is 45 degrees C. The next part of the question then is, how long did the liquid take to cool to 50 degrees? So this time we look at our temperature axes and we look for 50, which is by here, and we read the graph along, and we can read down that it was at 50 degrees at 10 minutes. Okay, so question number 14. 320 oranges are divided equally into 5 boxes. How many oranges are in each box? Well, this is a division sum because you've got 320 oranges being shared equally into 5 boxes. So you do whichever way you feel most comfortable with, but I'm going to show you 2 methods. The first is the chunking method, which you will have looked at in class. So I'm going to write 320 divided by 5 boxes. And the first chunk I'm going to take out is 5 lots of 20. So 5 lots of 20 is 100. So I take away 100. That leaves me with 220. I'm then going to take another chunk out of 100, which is another 5 multiplied by 20. And then I can take away that 100, which leaves me with 120. I'm then going to do it again. So 5 lots of 20. Take away 100. Which will leave me with 20. So I've just got 20 left that I need to get rid of. I know that 5 times 4 is 20. 5 fours are 20. So I can get rid of that last chunk, and then I'm down to 0. But now all I need to do is add up the numbers that I've multiplied 5 by. So I've got 20, 40, 64. So the answer is 64 oranges. The other way you could do that is like this. You can draw a division grid, and you can do 320 divided by 5. 5 goes into 3 no times. It doesn't fit. So we write a 0 above the 3. 5 goes into 32 6 times with a remainder of 2, and then 5 goes into that 24 times. Therefore my answer is 64. Okay, next question. Circle the two numbers that are less than 1/2. Now if you notice, all these numbers are in decimals, so we need to convert our half to a decimal, and you should know that a half as a decimal is 0.5. Therefore we are looking for any of these numbers that are less than 0.5. So here we've got 0.35. It's not 0.35, it's 0.35, and therefore that one is less than 0.5. Then we've got 0.7, well that's more than 0.5. Then we've got 0.2, well that's also less than 0.5. Then we've got 0.6, that's more, and then we've got 0.75. So the one that could catch you out there is 0.35. Make sure you say the numbers after the decimal point separately. It's 0.35, not 0.35. Okay, question number 16. 13.25 centimetres equals how many millimetres? Well, to get from centimetres to millimetres, all we need to do is multiply by 10. So if we multiply 13.25 by 10, we get 132.5, because all the numbers just shift one place to the left. Question number 17. How much water is in the jug? Well, before we can read off the level of water off this scale, we need to work out what each of these little jumps is. So we've got 250 millilitres at this point, and up to that point there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps. So if we do 250 divided by 5, we know that those little jumps are going up in 50 millilitres. So we start at 0, that's 50, that's 100, add another 50, that's 150, add another 50, that's 200, add another 50, that's 250, which takes us to that point. If we keep adding 50s, that's 300, add another 50, that's 350, and the water level lies between 350 and 400. It's exactly halfway, which means that the water level is at 375 millilitres. The next part of the question says there is 3/4 of a litre of water in another jug. How many millilitres is this? Well, you need to know for this question that 1000 millilitres is the same as 1 litre. So how many millilitres is this? You have to circle the correct answer. The correct answer is 750 millilitres. Question number 18. A clock shows this time, 14:25. What time did the clock show 30 minutes earlier? So we need to count backwards 30 minutes. Now the first thing I'm going to do is take off this 25 minutes. So if I take off the 25 minutes, that takes me to 1400 hours, or 2 o'clock. And I know that 30 is made up of that 25 add another 5 minutes, so I'm going to take off another 5 minutes, which brings me to 13:55. The next part of the question says write the time the clock shows 1 1/4 hours after 14:25. The first thing I'm going to do is add on that 1 hour, so 14:25 add 1 hour brings me to 15:25, and then all I need to do is add that 1/4 of an hour, which is 15 minutes. So 15:25 add 15 minutes is 15:40. Question number 19. This shape is made from centimetre cubes. You can see there are centimetre cubes all joined together there. It says, what is the volume of this shape? In other words, the volume is how much space is inside this 3D structure here. So the amount of space, when we measure volume, we measure it in centimetres cubed. You can see that little 3 there, meaning that's centimetres cubed. And all we need to do, if they're centimetre cubes, is count the cubes. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the answer is 6 centimetres cubed. Number 20. Ben saves money by buying these 3 books in a sale. Altogether he pays £12.50. How much money has he saved? Well, to know how much money he saved, we need to know what he would have spent on the books had they not been in the sale. And we do that by adding these prices together. So I'm going to start off with the biggest and put them in a column addition sum. So I'm going to start off with £7.50. Then I'm going to go to £4.75. And then I'm going to go to £3.75 also. I'll draw my answer line there. So make sure when you write out your sum that you've put your digits in your correct place value or in their correct place value. I'm going to start up by adding this column. So I've got 0, add 5, well that's 10. So I'm going to carry the 1 into the next column. Then I'm going to add up this column. So I've got 7, add 7, which is 14. Add another 5, which is 19. Add the 1, which is 20. So I'm going to put the 2 in the next column and put the 0 there. Don't forget then to put your decimal point underneath the other decimal points, and then I'm going to add up our final column. We've got 7, add 4, which is 11, add the 3, which is 14, add the 2, which is 16, and therefore it's £16 that he would have spent on those books if they weren't in the sale. But that's not the question finished yet. It says how much money has he saved. So to work out how much he saved, we need to take what he would have spent, which was £16 from our last calculation, and then we need to take away what he actually did spend, which is £12.50. So to work out this, we do 0 take away 0, which is 0. We do 0 take away 5, which we cannot do, so we go over to the next column and we take one of those units there and we put a 5 in its place and we carry the 1 over to the tenths column. Then we do 10 take away 5, which equals 5. Don't forget to put your decimal point in the same place as the others, just sat underneath them. You can see how they're all nicely in a line. And then we do 5 take away 2, that leaves us with 3. And then 1 take away 1, which leaves us with 0. Therefore, he has saved himself £3.50. Something divided by 100 equals 35.6. So when we have a blank space in the middle of our sum, we need to work the sum backwards. In other words, we do the inverse operation. So we start off with the answer, and instead of dividing, we do the opposite, which would be multiplying. So we take 35.6 and we multiply it by 100. That will give us then the answer that goes in that box there. So when we multiply 35.6 by 100, we'll move the digits 2 place values to the left, which gives us 356 if we do it 1 place, and to put a 0 there, we'll have moved it 2 places. Therefore, it's 3,560. 12 pencils for £5.40. How much for 4 pencils? Well, there are a couple of different ways to work this out, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to start by working out what 1 pencil costs. And to find what 1 pencil costs, I need to divide £5.40 by 12. And to make life a little bit easier for myself, I'm not going to work in pounds with a decimal point. I'm going to take the decimal point out, and I'm only going to work using pence. So I know that £5.40 is the same as 540 pence. Now, I'm dividing by 12, and I know that 12 goes into 5 no times. I know that 12 goes into 54, though, 4 times, with a remainder of 6. And then 12 goes into 60 5 times. So I know that each pencil costs 45 pence. But that's not the end of my sum, because the question asks how much for 4 pencils. So now I need to multiply this by 4. So if I were to do 45 multiplied by 4, or you could do 45 add 45 add 45 add 45. In other words, 4 lots of 45, whichever way you're most comfortable, and you will work out that that would cost £1.80. Okay, well, this is our final question. Money given by a bank as interest on savings. Saving £100 in a bank for 1 year gives you £3. Saving £200 in a bank for 1 year gives you £6. And then the question is, if you save £700 in a bank for 1 year, how much interest will they give you? Well, we know that if you save £100, you get £3. Now, if you double that from £100 to £200 in a year, they will double their interest as well, so they will give you £6. Now, what we need to do is look at, if you get £100, we are looking at £700. So if you times that by 7, you can also times the interest by 7. And if you times 3 by 7, you get 21.